Good morning, boys and girls, and happy Friday. I hope that you're wearing your purple. If you are, remember to send a picture to me or Miss Sweet so we can put you on the Kreitner Facebook page. Alright, today we're going to take a look at fractions. We're going to do 2 addition problems with fractions, 2 subtraction, and then 1 multiplication. I decided to kick them up a notch, so they might be a little bit more difficult or challenging, but that's what we want. We want to be continuing to learn. So here we go. Our first problem that we're going to do is 4/8 plus 5/8. First you're going to do, or what you see is that the 2 bottom numbers are the same. So that means that we are going to keep the denominator, the bottom number, the same. So we're going to keep that as 8s. Now we're going to add our 2 top numbers. So 4 plus 5, which is 9. So some of you might have just put 9/8, which is partially correct. However, since we notice that it's bigger on top than it is on bottom, that means it's an improper fraction. We need to break it apart. So 1 whole using 8s would be 8/8. And if I were to subtract 8/8 from 9/8, what I would have left is 1/8. So that means I can rewrite my answer as 1 whole and 1/8. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Our next problem is 1/2 plus 3/4. Some of you might be thinking, Mrs. Whitener, I think we did this, but like a long time ago. Well, we're going to do this as a refresher. So, if you can see, or you should be able to tell, that the 2 denominators or the 2 bottom numbers are different. That means we're going to have to make one of them like the other. It would be easier for us to make this 2 into a 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite that fraction, so 1/2, and I'm going to ask myself, what would I have to multiply 2 by to get 4? If you said 2, then you're correct. But that means I have to do it on top and bottom. So now I'm going to do 1 times 2, which is 2, and 2 times 2, which is 4. So that means that 1/2 is actually the same as 2/4. So now I'm going to do my addition problem, but instead of writing 1/2, I'm going to write 2/4 since they're the same thing. So 2/4 plus 3/4. Or now my denominators are the same, so I'm going to keep it as fourths. And I add my 2 numerators, the 2 top numbers. 2 plus 3 is 5. So 5/4 is partially your answer. We're almost done. Remember that it's bigger on top than it is on bottom, which means it's an improper fraction, which means we need to make it a mixed number. Because I'm kind of running out of room, I'm going to write it over here. So 5/4. I would have to break it apart, and 1 whole using fourths would be 4/4. Gotta draw a line so I don't get distracted. If I were to take 4/4 from 5/4, I would have 1/4 left over, which means my answer is 1 whole and 1/4. Sorry, that's kind of written all over the place, but I only have so much room. Alright. Our next question is a subtraction question. It is 8/8 minus 6/8. Alright, once again I can see that my denominators are the same, so that means I'm going to keep them the same. So my 8 will be the denominator. Next I do 8 minus 6. 8 minus 6 is 2. I ask myself, is it bigger on top than it is on bottom? No. So then my answer stays the same, so your answer should be 2/8. Alright, the next one is 14/5 minus 7/5. Alright, once again we have denominators that are the same, so I'm going to keep that 5 as my denominator. Now, some of you might look at this problem and say, Miss Whitener, it's bigger on top than it is on bottom, so I need to break it apart. We'll wait to do that to the very end. As long as my 2 denominators are the same, I can still solve it. And then if it's still bigger than 1 whole, then I can break it apart to become, or to make it a mixed number. So 14 minus 7 is 7. So now I see that it's bigger on top than it is on bottom, so I have to break it apart. 1 whole is 5/5. If I were to take 5/5 away from 7/5, that would give me 2/5. So that means my final answer is 1 2/5. All right, we have one more problem, and it is a multiplication problem. It is 5 times 2/3. All right, now some of you may remember this, some of you may not. So if you did, hopefully you worked through this problem and you're checking your work now. If you don't remember how to do this, you can do this with me now. So the first thing that we do is I'm going to rewrite this. You have to put a 1 underneath the 5. So a line and a 1 to make it 5/1. We're going to multiply it by 2/3. Now, we multiply the bottoms only and then the tops only. So let's do the top first. 5 times 2 is 10. And then 1 times 3 is 3. So 10/3 is your answer, partially. We still, as you can tell, it's bigger on top than it is on bottom, so that means it's an improper fraction, which means we need to make it a mixed number. Normally, we would break it apart, and we would have to do that several times because it's actually bigger than 1 whole. It's a couple wholes. So what we're going to do to make it quicker is we're going to divide 10 divided by 3. How many times can 3 go into 10? That would be 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. And I get a remainder of 1. I write my remainder as a numerator, and I put the number I was dividing by as the denominator. So your final answer should be 3 1/3. I know that these were a little bit more challenging, but I just want to make sure that we don't lose what we learned back in February and early March. So if you have any questions about some of these problems and you'd like to get some help and work them out more, please contact me. If you were like, this was awesome, I love having more challenging problems, that's great. You can even do more, and you can send them to Miss Sweet or I, and we'll give you extra dojos. I can't wait to work with you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Bye.